Sir Paul McCartney, Ray Charles, and has just worked with the Queen of Soul herself. No, not Anne Diamond, Aretha Franklin. Yes, we're joined by Chris White, saxophonist supreme. He's got a one-man show coming up this Saturday at the Arlington Arts Centre in Newbury. He started his amazing career after he worked for a while delivering meat as a saxophonist with only Dire Straits. I'm hoping he brings his sax in, but even if he doesn't, some great music on the way and some fantastic musical memories from Chris White. Also on the show, what a fantastic band, what a fantastic sound, and the man in the studio with me was instrumental, see what I've done there, in creating that sound. He was with them for 10 years from the time they were founded and started in 1984 until they knocked it on the head in 1994. We are joined by Chris White, saxophonist supreme.
Good afternoon.
Great to see you, Chris. Thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Real pleasure.
And people are going to see you this Saturday at the Arlington Arts Centre, Mary Hare School, Newbury, about 8 o'clock. It's this Saturday, and it's, I presume, well, it says a night of mind-blowing sax with some reminiscences in there as well. What are you going to be doing on Saturday night?
Well, I'm going to be playing some of the things that people might know me for and talking through my career, and it's been a long career now. And
do you take questions from people as well?
I don't take questions, actually. I've got so much material, there's not time for questions.
So no time for heckling, and quite right too.
Heckling people do anyway.
Well, let's start, if we may, with the early days. So there you are, there's something in the saxophone that speaks to you.
Absolutely.
But you've got to pay for the lessons. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I was at school down in Bristol. I grew up in Bristol in a comprehensive school, and started playing saxophone, which was amazing that they had one, but they had one anyway. So I started playing saxophone.
And what lay behind that? Who did you see him play it? Because David Bowie was a big sax player in the early years, wasn't he?
Yeah, I didn't see him till later. I don't know who I saw. I was watching TV with my dad one night, and maybe it was John Dankworth, somebody like that.
Because it's a fantastically glamorous instrument, isn't it? That's the thing about it. It's an eye catcher.
Real shiny, yeah, it was nice. And I think I saw him and went to school and said I was playing violin at the time, but I didn't love the violin. And they gave me a saxophone. They had one in the sack in a cupboard. Very quickly I knew that's what I was going to be doing.
Wow.
And I was getting lessons at school from my maths teacher, just whenever he could. And it got to the point where I knew I wanted to do it. So I said to my mum, I need to get a job because I need to go for private lessons with this man, and I'm going to have to pay.
What, with the maths teacher?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He had been a pro player in London.
Fantastic.
For a long time.
Again, that's kind of synchronicity, isn't it? What are the odds of that? They've got a sax in the cupboard, in a sack, and your maths teacher is a former pro musician.
It's amazing. If you look at it with hindsight, there are so many fortuitous things like that. So many people who try to help. I said to my mum I need a job because I need to. So she went down to the Co-op butchers. She went down to the shops and said Chris needs a job to pay for his saxophone lessons. And these Co-op butchers said, well, Saturday morning you can come and deliver meat for us. Tell him to bring his bike. And we'll give him 10 shillings. 50p.
Well, like the boy from the Hovis advert, meat on your bike.
It was. I was cycling around the council estates, Lawrence Weston and Shirehampton, with people's Sunday roasts in my rucksack, dribbling out the back down my jeans.
With the notion that's going to catapult you into musical fame.
No, it was just. I didn't
just pay for the odd lesson.
Just pay for the lessons. So and it did, and it paid for my lessons, and here I am now.
Now, I mentioned Dire Straits, of course, and that was the big band, your big band. But you worked before Dire Straits with Sir Paul McCartney. What did you do with him, and how did that come about? Were you working there as a kind of session musician? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was. At that point, I was actually doing an album with Nick Hayward from Haircut 100.
Whom we spoke to on the show just a few weeks ago.
Did you?
Great talent. Underrated musician, I think, and singer.
Absolutely. And songwriter.
Yeah. Because I love his solo one, Take That Situation. It's such a great bouncy song.
Well, I got the call to do Paul McCartney when we were recording Take That Situation. We were doing the brass parts for that.
I had no idea of that, and I just said that. And the brass parts let it down a bit, but everything else is great. That's a great song, isn't it? It's a brilliant song, that is. So you get the call from Sir Paul McCartney or his people or whatever, saying what?
Saying, we're doing a movie, we've heard about you from Jeff Emerick, who was producing Nick's album, who was the guy who engineered all the Beatles stuff. We need a sax player for this movie. Could you come along and, and I said, yeah, audition, yeah. So, I'd love to. So, I went up to the film studios thinking I was going to audition, and met the producer's guy called Andros, who kind of looked at me and went, "Oh yeah, you'll do, fine."
Is this Give My Regards to Broad Street?
It is Give My Regards to Broad Street.
And what kind of look were you going for then, Chris? You're in the 80s, you're in the pop business, big shoulders, what was it? Yeah. What kind of clothes were you wearing?
It was, yeah.
Short jackets, big shoulders?
A lot of pink.
Yeah. Hairspray in the hair, bit of back combing?
Yeah, a bit of short on the sides, long at the back.
Oh, a bit of a mullet.
Yeah, just like it is now. Thank you very much.
When you get in the way of the saxophone. So you're in a movie, or working with Sir Paul McCartney?
Sir Paul McCartney, which is unbelievable. And they asked me to go in for a makeup day. They wanted to try out this makeup for this scene. And I got there and sat down with this makeup artist, Barbara Daly, who incidentally did Lady Di, Princess Diana's makeup for her wedding. And I hear Paul McCartney coming down the corridor of this room, and he's saying, "Morning, morning" to everybody. And it's a distinctive voice, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah. So he shouted, "Morning, Barbara," and walked past. And then I heard him turn around and come back and start walking back. And he walked in and said, "You're Chris, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." This is Paul McCartney.
I'm getting chills here. This story.
Honestly. He said, "Do you know what you're doing? You know what this is about?" And I said, "Well, I'm in for makeup." And he said, No. Do you know what the movie's about?" I said, No, I don't. So Paul McCartney grabbed a chair, sat down, and sat there for 20 minutes and ran me through the whole movie. And I didn't hear a word he said. I was sitting there, all was going on in my head was, that's Paul McCartney.
This is Paul McCartney.
That's Paul McCartney.
Tell him about his movie.
Pinch him. No, don't pinch him, you idiot. Yeah.
And was making the movie a fun experience? Because it opened to sort of mixed reviews, but is now regarded as a real kind of 80s classic, I think.
It did open to mixed reviews, you're right. It was a lot of fun to do, and got to work with some incredible musicians he brought for the track I was doing, Silly Love Songs. He brought over Jeff Porcaro from Toto.
Oh, wow.
And Steve Lukather, and bass player Lewis Johnson. So you probably know what filming's like. You spend 3 minutes playing the song, and then they spend 3 hours adjusting the lights.
As they say, filming is hurry up and wait.
Absolutely.
Get there at 5 a.m, get your makeup on, and if you're lucky, you might be in front of a camera by, say, 11:30.
That's right. That's exactly what it was. But in the intervening time, I spent all this time chatting with these great players, just playing to fill the time. It was unbelievable.
Okay, we're in conversation with Chris White, who you can catch this Saturday, Arlington Arts Centre, Mary Hare School, Newbury. We're only going to scratch the surface. He's going to play some fantastic sax for you this Saturday, and also some great stories. More from Chris in a moment. After this, it's only Paul McCartney and Wings and Silly Love Songs on BBC Radio Berkshire. Whatever way you roll it, that's a beautiful song. Silly Love Songs by Paul McCartney and Wings, the song that Chris White played in the movie Give My Regards to Broad Street. And then, of course, you've worked with Paul McCartney, you've been in a movie. How did the Dire Straits thing happen for you, Chris?
That came along a little while after that, and in another odd way. It's all odd coincidences. I got asked to do a solo on a Christmas single for a TV star, a lady called Suzanne Danielle. And she was
the dark curly haired girl. I remember. Yes, yeah. Another big 80s face.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I got asked to do this Christmas. She was doing a Christmas single called Silk Stockings, and
I bet she was.
And so I went in and played a solo on it, and her manager said, "I think you're really good. I'd really like to try to help you." So I said, "Thank you very much." She knew the manager of Dire Straits, and mentioned me to him. Mark had been out recording Local Hero in America with a sax player called Michael Brecker, who was one of my big heroes. So I actually sounded like Michael Brecker at that point. And then about 3 weeks later, I get this call saying, "Can you go and do..." I got home, it was on a post-it note on the phone. Mark Knopfler, Air Studios, 3-hour session, movie, Comfort and Joy.
Oh, right, the Bill Forsyth film, like Local Heroes of Bill Forsyth. The Ice Cream Wars. And was that Michael Brecker from the Brecker Brothers?
Yeah.
Because they played on Frank Sinatra's last proper studio album, didn't they, on LA's My Lady? They're just top dudes.
Top. Absolutely brilliant.
So suddenly you're doing a film soundtrack with Mark Knopfler?
So I turn up at Air Studios with Mark. I get there early, as I do, roaring through whatever I could play. And in walks this guy with his baseball cap on and says, "You sound really like Michael Brecker." I said, "Oh, that's great, thank you very much."
That's a compliment, isn't it?
Absolutely. I said, "Thank you very much." He said, "I'm Mark." So that 3-hour session, we started playing, and it immediately went really well. It was nice. So that 3-hour session turned into 3 days.
And then 10 years.
And then 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And did you have any idea? I mean, Sultans of Swing was a big breakthrough hit, and it was a fantastic different sound at the time, very fresh and very tight. But of course, I don't think anyone could predict the way that Dire Straits were then going to evolve, because every album was very different, and every track and single was very different.
That's absolutely right. Nobody could. And Brothers in Arms took the band. We started that tour. I got involved on that. I was asked to do the album and couldn't do it as I was committed to something else. So climbed on the tour then, and it was a tour like every tour. It was on the bus, maybe on the bus overnight, and then suddenly we weren't on the bus overnight. We were in hotels, and then suddenly we're flying here and there, and then suddenly you're getting on the plane, turning left instead of right.
And was it money for nothing and the chicks for free? Maybe not so much of the chicks, but, good times.
It was not money for nothing. It was hard work, but I loved every minute.
Wow, yeah. And that's the great thing. So suddenly you're flying first class, because the band, to say you broke America is like saying that Donald Trump's got odd hair.
It was such a success for the band, that album. And you're right, America was massive.
And of course then, and the great, the coinciding with the arrival of MTV and that mind-blowing, and still an amazing video for MTV, Money for Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all rolls on and these coincidences happen, and, it's just brilliant.
And can you stay with us, Chris? We're going to play another track if we may, because I want to hear about you working with this woman, one of the greatest voices of the 20th century, the Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin. This is an early classic. This is Respect. The man, Chris White, has played for her. You're going to find out the story after this. And was this another thing you with all respect, bumbled into, or just get the phone call, or what happened?
Absolutely, that's exactly what happened. A mate of mine, I'm doing some stuff with the band at the moment, and there's a guy called Richard Cottle, who worked with Bowie a lot, actually, back down the line. And he just called about a month ago and said, "Hey, Chris, I've just finished doing these brass arrangements for Aretha Franklin." I said, "Really?" "Yeah, no, really?" He said, "Yeah, you don't fancy playing on it, do you?" So I said, "Yeah." Sure.
A nanosecond later.
Shall I come now? Yeah. And so I went along and did the session, and Aretha wasn't there. She doesn't.
But you got the voice you're playing behind, and you got the arrangements.
It's her voice just coming off the multi-track, in the cans.
And she's re-recorded the old Atlantic hits and these classics.
That seems to be what's happening. We did 3 tracks: Respect, Natural Born Woman, and a thing called Angel. So Angel was the last one. It was just fantastic sitting there playing to that voice. And we did Angel, and Rich said, "Okay, we're finished. Now we've got 3 minutes left. Chris, can you play a solo on this?"
Oh, wow, in 3 minutes?
So
plenty of notice then. Cheers, mate.
Fortunately, I got away with it.
And where does that come from? I mean, are you thinking of different phrases? How do you build a solo when the song's been written by somebody else?
Oh, for me, the song is the important thing. So I'd heard the song a bit during the session, listened to the lyrics a bit, and it's hard to say. It brings out something. I know what the chord structure is, so I know what's going on with the band.
And have you ever done an accidental pop when it comes out wrong? Pop?
Only a lot.
I have wondered what it must have been like, and Chris is staying with us, I hope, for another chat, but say you're playing behind somebody like Frank Sinatra, and you're the unlucky musician who hits a bum note.
Yeah, not so good.
Nah.
Not so good.
You wake up in the desert.
Yeah.
Allegedly. More with Chris White, a night of mind-blowing sax on the way. It's this Saturday, Arlington Arts Centre, Merry Hair School, Newbury. It's a fantastic night. Sax solos, sax music, and some great anecdotes like just some of the ones we've been hearing on BBC Radio Berkshire. BBC Radio Berkshire.
Travel you trust.
As it happens. The whole time the band was formed, who's on this Saturday night, Arlington Arts Centre, Merry Hair School, Newbury, a night of mind-blowing sax and reminiscences with Chris White. You've also played behind or alongside Ray Charles. Was that live?
It was live, yeah. Another odd, the phone rings. Can you do a gig with Ray Charles? Of course.
But isn't he a bit like, not quite as full on as James Brown, but he wants perfection, doesn't he, Ray?
It was an interesting. It was in Paris.
Yeah.
In the basement of the Louvre. The basement of the Louvre is kind of catacomb.
And the French have always loved R&B and Le Jazz Hot and that kind of stuff, haven't they?
All kinds of yeah. I mean, it was rammed down there, and there was a situation where we were given. So I was part of the Ray Charles big band, and some parts were handed out, and we all didn't have the same parts. Same song, but not the same arrangement. So we all...
It's like Morecambe and Wise, the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order.
I'm afraid it was.
Oh dear.
I'm afraid it was. So we start playing, and you quickly think, no, this is not working because I'm playing different to this guy here.
Just a bit.
Mr. Charles said, whoa, 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 whoa. What's go saxophones? What's going on there? You know. So somebody said, we don't seem to have the same arrangement. So
Gulp.
he called in his librarian, the man who looks after all the music, and there was 5 minutes of...
There was an exchange, wasn't
There
there?
was an exchange. There was an exchange.
He said exchange of views.
Yes.
And did you get the right parts?
Yeah,
I
we got the
presume you
right
did.
parts. We got the right parts, and it was just fantastic to play with him. Just fantastic.
Because he's one of those guys, I think, a bit like Stevie Wonder. And I don't just mean because they're blind, but, the music seems to possess him. I've seen him live a couple of times, once at the Royal Festival Hall, and it was just... I couldn't quite put it into words, which I suppose is what great music does. If you could say it, you wouldn't go to the great trouble of singing and playing it, would you? And it was kind of transcendental almost to see him play.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what music is about, isn't it? It's the search for some kind of transcendence, really.
There's a brilliant quote by the Victorian critic, a guy called Walter Pater, and he said that all art aspires to the condition of music, perfect unity of form and content.
Wow.
And when it happens, you kind of know it, but you can't really define it other than that, can you?
No,
Something just clicks or gels.
Yeah, and that, yes, it does.
And
It's hard to say much about
So
it.
you're Ray Charles in the basement of the Louvre. You've also got Robbie Williams with, no doubt, 10,000 Screaming Girls.
Yeah.
Could you hear yourself play those nights?
I could hear myself play. Rob was busy moving around the stage, avoiding bits of clothing that were coming up and stuff like that.
String vests,
String
Wellington
vests,
boots,
that's right.
maybe the old pair of knickers.
Pair of Y fronts.
Yeah.
I loved working with Robbie. I really did. I thought he was. I think he is one of the greatest entertainers we've.
Well, he's a proper British Rat Pack star, isn't he?
Yeah.
If you had three other guys, he would be Dean Martin.
That's right.
Because he can sing it, but he's just fantastically warm and funny. And he did a thing, actually. I worked on a Ange and Dec Christmas show a while ago, and they're all big mates, and he agreed to come on it. And he did his latest single, and then he took part in a spoof with, of all people, I got them out of Maiden at the Thames Valley Choir, and he sang White Christmas, and you can see it on YouTube, and they keep interrupting him. And he was such a great sport. He came in for the rehearsal, he signed autographs for all the daughters and granddaughters of the choir members, and I think that he made a big donation because he stuck it on one of his. He liked it he put it on as a DVD extra because it was very funny, and he's just a genuinely warm, nice bloke.
That's my experience of him too. Absolutely. A lot of respect for Rob.
I would ask you who's the most difficult person you've ever worked with, but it's probably not a good thing to ask, is it? No.
Couldn't.
And what's happening, if anything, with Dire Straits? I mean, people sometimes float this notion of, because you're a huge band, still a hugely loved back catalogue, still selling, I'm sure, every year thousands of units. Any prospect of a big get-together again, a world tour?
No. Mark is...
Have a word with Mark for me. I know you're connected. Just say Paul and the gang at BBC Radio Berkshire. Even if they just come in and do an exclusive concert for us, not for broadcast, just for a Christmas party. I've got 50 quid burning on my pocket.
That much. I'm sure we're on.
But he's doing other things as well, isn't he? Kind of still exploring different forms of music.
Mark has got a really successful solo career now. He's done lots of albums and as you say, exploring other avenues, which is absolutely right. That's what it's about. It's about, pushing it on.
We're all looking forward hugely to Saturday night at the Arlington Arts Centre, Mary Hare School in Newbury. It's Chris White, a night of mind-blowing sax with Chris of Dire Straits and some fantastic reminiscences. As I said, we have only scratched the surface of what this man's contributed to, played alongside, and actually his stories are fantastic. So get yourself along there, Arlington Arts Centre, this Saturday night in Newbury, and say Paul Ross from BBC Radio Berkshire sent you. Other gigs are available, but probably not quite as good that night.